right, good afternoon, everyone. Before we start, we have a tradition in the School of Geography to ask if anyone has any announcements or kudos to share before we get going here. Anyone? All right, okay. Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. On behalf of the University of Arizona School of Geography, Development, and Environment and co-sponsor Southwest Center, I welcome you to the 15th annual My Arizona lecture. So thank you so much for joining us. I would like to remind everyone that the University of Arizona occupies the territory of the Tohono O'odham, Pasquayaqui, and Apache peoples. We respect their cultures, honor their histories, and acknowledge that the appropriation of their lands and waters is the historical geographic basis of the territory today known as Arizona. And if you want a deeper dive into the politics of universities like the University of Arizona, that are land-grant universities, and their impacts on native lands, Christopher Conover from AZPM has a podcast called The Buzz, and actually the episode is about a year old, but they've just reposted it on this question, so looks pretty interesting. So you can take a look at that to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the complexities of that. So my name is Jeff Bannister. I'm director of the Southwest Center, and I'm also an associate professor in the School of Geography, Development, and Environment. With me here today is our outreach coordinator in the Southwest Center, Carlos Quintero. And he's going to be recording the talk today. So, and then he'll do some editing on it, and we will post it on the Southwest Center's YouTube page. So you'll be able to check it out later on. So thanks very much, Carlos. And I also want to say thanks to Brittany Schoenfelder, the administrative assistant in the School of Geography, and Dr. Elisa Nelson, interim director. Thanks to the both of you for all of your help in putting this together. And then just a quick reminder that we have a reception to follow in the courtyard here. We'll be serving empanadas from Che Cafe, and we'll be serving non-adult beverages, also provided by the University of Arizona. So the idea for the annual My Arizona lecture was hatched by my geography colleagues, Sally Marston, Diana Liverman, and J.P. Jones, who are all here today with us. Several years ago, they started to talk about how, as a school, we could create a space for showcasing Arizona's great historical geographic complexity for a broader audience. And so here you are. The first lecture was given by Dr. Julio Betancourt, who's a lead scientist and paleoclimatologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. And since that time, we've had an amazing diversity of illustrious My Arizona speakers, including my colleague in the Southwest Center, Dr. Maribel Alvarez, who is the founding director of the Southwest Folklife Alliance, and also Kimi's boss. So unfortunately, Maribel can't be here to see this today, but maybe she's on Zoom. I hope so. So it is a privilege and an honor to introduce you to this year's speaker, novelist, artist, folklorist, dancer, choreographer, School of Geography alum, polymath, and a total badass with a tender heart, Kimi Eisele. And I will actually say that, maintaining a tender heart in this moment is a radical act. Absolutely. This tenderness of heart is a clear through line that runs across Kimi's expansive oeuvre. At the core cordium, the heart of hearts of her many creative expressions, is a single and singular inquiry. In her words, quote, the embodied, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual question of here-ness. H-E-R-E, not H-E-A-R. What, in other words, does it mean to be situated, as we inevitably and inescapably are, in a particular place, or perhaps more appropriately for our time, at the nexus of many places, one among many other beings and part of many entwining processes? What does this kind of situation presume or ask of us? What is the nature of our responsibilities to our places? And what kinds of worlds are possible when we human animals finally stop situating ourselves at the apex of an imagined pyramid of value and worth above all other creatures. Kimi has long sought answers to these questions and many more by engaging a huge array of people, non-human animals, landscapes, plants, ideas, and places. And the answers turn into more questions, come back to open new lines of inquiry, take sudden turns that lead down unforeseen pathways, ultimately ending up as the animating force in a rainbow world of creative expressions, from dance and performance art to oral histories, and more recently, a beautifully written and highly imaginative novel, The Lightest Object in the Universe. Soon-ish to be followed by another novel, so stay tuned on that. This, I suspect, is at least partly what she means when she calls herself a wayward geographer. Kimi's intellectual odyssey also includes a Master's of Geography degree completed in this very school, which was at the time a department, which concluded in 1999 with a thesis entitled Landscapes of Solidarity, Children's Perceptions of Life on the US-Mexico Border. That project involved working with kids in the fast-growing colonias and barrios of Nogales, Sonora, on the southeastern edge of the town, of the city. And those kids were given cameras to engage and express their senses of place. Most of the children in her study were from families who had left their hometowns in rural Sinaloa to find work in the bustling border economy. And I know Kimi maintained contact with some of them throughout time, maybe still does, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll find out. And in classic Kimi Eisele style, within the brief span of 2 years of graduate study, she left an enduring legacy, launching a student-run journal of creative geography called You Are Here, which is still in publication. So before I finally surrender this hot mic, I want to read a small excerpt from Kimi's beautifully rendered introduction to the first issue, which came out in spring of 1998. So here is that first issue. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. You are here. Welcome. This is where geography unfolds into story, art, observation, and experience, where words and pictures pull places off the map and recast them into full relief, where representations of space and place get personal and landscape blurs into memoir. Popular conceptions of geography summon maps, globes, and place names, and geographers of all people are expected to know things, in quotes. The capital of Tajikistan, which islands rise into the Coral Sea, how the Rockies folded into a mountain range. Ashamedly, we don't know all of these things, nor should we know them simply as things. Why people migrate, how they manipulate their environment, and why they live by the millions in today's cities are also the stuff of geography. But as we become disciplined into the discipline of geography, it has occurred to us that geography means much more. Of course, maps and place names indicate important geographic things, but they don't really get at the nature of places themselves, nor do scholarly studies about geomorphology, climate variability, global restructuring, or regional science for that matter. For place, as Pierce Lewis suggests here, is, quote, ultimately a matter of the heart. So that is the kind of writing that you will get when you read Kimi Eisele's amazing work. So with that, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay. Thank you, Jeff. And thanks to Dana Liverman and Sally Marston too, who allowed me to do things a little bit out of the ordinary when I was a student here way back when. So thanks so much for coming today. It's really nice to be here with you all. So when I picked this photo, I thought it was this room. And then when I got here, I was like, wait, that's not, this is not where we are. We're here, but it looks kind of this way. So we're here together, March 21st, 2025. So we will enjoy the next 40 minutes, hopefully together, thinking about this. I'm gonna take this cartographic declaration, which to me feels like an invitation and kind of an invocation. And it tends to, for me, follow with questions, many questions. So if you are here, well, where exactly? Why are you here? Who else is here? Who came before? Who's not here? Why is here? What does it feel like to be here? So I could go on and on, but I want to look at this from multiple angles, kind of going through some of my projects of the last, I guess, 25 years. So this is the building where we are. And it houses, of course, as Jeff said, the School of Geography, fancy dancy building with all kinds of special features, which someone else can tell you about, because I can't. But when I arrived in Tucson in 1997, the geography department and Department of Geography and Regional Development was here in Harville building. A nice enough building from the outside, but on the inside, it kind of felt like this. It was just against the bright Arizona sky. It was sort of a maze of hallways. There was no central gathering place, nowhere to lounge on the couches with your fellow graduate students. And so it was a bit challenging. Grad school in itself is challenging. And so at the time, the conversations that were going on in geography were all about this earth and how the movement of goods and services and people and capital was happening faster and faster. This idea of globalization, this reality of globalization. And everybody kept saying like that the world was just getting smaller. So that's where I found myself as a student. And it would be about 7 years until I got one of these. So while the world was kind of starting to move at a faster pace, you also were very much here. We had the internet, of course. We had email. And I remember one of my very first interactions with a professor was we were standing in the hallway talking, and she was saying, well, we should get together. Email me. And I was like, but wait, we're here right now, standing here. And it was the first time I had heard the word being used as a verb, because email was a thing. It was not a thing that you did. But of course, it became very much a thing that you did, and it's still a thing that you do. So it was just this like contradiction of being here, but not being here. And there was this sense that like the local was starting to disappear. So also right in the year before I came to Tucson, you guys remember that, for example, you could order your movies through the mail. And so there was conversations about, well, what about the video store? Like Blockbuster was kind of dying, but like Casa Video was still. So what would this do to Casa Video? So all these questions of scale about here-ness. And I think that it was really disorienting for me. And I just wanted to make something. And it was a little ways off from my master's thesis. And I wanted to be having conversations about what that disorientation felt like. So this idea of the Journal of Creative Geography came. I didn't really know what creative geography was. It just was a phrase that sounded good. But welcoming other renderings of space and place, other kinds of conversations, very personal reflections. And so I gathered some graduate students together, and we birthed this RAG that, as Jeff said, is still going so many years later. And I just want to give a shout out to the most recent issue that was published in 2024 to just really underscore like the value of an experiment like this that can give students like such a way of finding their own voice, finding their own leadership. So the two editors of this issue, Cassidy Schoenfeld and Raven Moffett, both Indigenous, created an issue about placemaking, place being, relationships, the geography of relationships with an Indigenous lens, which is not something that ever would have happened in 1997. So it's like a testament to the growth of the field, to the growth of the students. And I'm so excited by this issue and the conversations that it generates about kinship beyond across cultures and with other species, because that, as you will see, is very dear to my heart. So please keep funding the journal. Yeah, I'll just go. So you are here. When I think about that phrase, I really think about like all the ways of beingness and all the ways of being here. So geographically and physically, but also emotionally and spiritually and intellectually and relationally. So I'm just going to take us through some of the projects that I've done over the last few years to get at some of that. So we'll start here in the Tucson Basin with the Santa Cruz River. The lifeline of Tucson, really the reason that we are all here to begin with. What can I offer here? Somewhere along the line, I remembered that I was a dancer and had grown up dancing. And this is not me. This is one of my dance colleagues, Katie, who's standing in the Santa Cruz riverbed. This would have been around 2010. She's got a swimsuit on, a swim cap, and she's sort of pretending to launch herself into the imaginary water. If you've lived in Tucson for a long time, you know that river for much of recent history only flowed during the monsoons. But before that, we know that it flowed more regularly and went underground sometimes. So there was this interest that I had in going back to the body and the dancing body to think about how choreography and the body could have conversations about water in a place that doesn't have much. So what could we discover by putting our body into the watershed and tracking it? So we embarked on a 2-year project where we walked the watershed. We worked with naturalists to understand where water comes from, where it flows, where it goes. We listened to stories of people who remembered the river flowing more regularly. We put ourselves into the riverbed as research to figure out what does it feel like. We are made of water. What does it feel like to be in a place that's so dry? And then we created a performance, sort of imagining this lifeline and kind of maybe summoning it back. So it happened in the dry riverbed of the Santa Cruz and along its banks. Some of the people in the audience were part of that performance. And then on a very hot day in April, the first 100-degree day of the season, we found ourselves lying on this sand. As soon as our skin hit the ground, we just like wanted to levitate because it was just so damn hot. And it felt at that point more of like a ritual purification than a performance. But we made an offering. We asked the river to flow again. We are here. Here's a gift for you, to be continued. So after thinking about water, or at the same time I was thinking about water, I also really started asking the question of who else is here. And most of my work for the last 15 years has been really about rethinking the word community to make sure that that word includes plants and animals and landscapes. So it's not just the human-centric here-ness. So we're going to move now just a little bit south to the Santa Rita Mountains. And there's been a long going battle here in the Santa Ritas about copper and copper mining in really pristine Sonoran Desert landscapes. So the Rosemont copper mine was wanting to develop a mine, and this was around 2013. They've been trying to build a mine there for much longer than that. And in fact, this is a struggle that like kind of ebbs and flows. And right now it's like really flowing. Yesterday, there was an executive order calling for more mining in our country. So the fight is back on again. So the idea was to think about what was at stake in this landscape. And some of my other colleagues here were part of this process, thinking about how to make people understand what was at stake. So I figured this is a more recent photo just showing some of the literal inroads that the now called copper world is making in those mountains. But what would happen if, like, as a two-legged body, I started to imagine the landscape as a non-two-legged body? And so I gathered the crew, my trusty crew of dancers, and we started to make trips down to the site near where the mine was going to go. And we just started researching. And so the thing about plant and animal species that are at risk is that some of them are very common, but some of them are very difficult to see because they're elusive and they're endangered. So this, for example, is the western yellow-billed cuckoo. It had been just listed as endangered, I think, in 2013. And so how do we capture the essence of these elusive species? And so we started filming, and we couldn't really study the species by looking at them. So we looked at video, we looked at photographs, and then we just kind of tried to imagine, based on what this landscape was like, how these animals and plants would be and how they would experience. So I'm gonna just play the little trailer we ended up producing an 18-minute field guide to Rosemont Ours. So it's like a play on the word Rosemont mine. It's not mine or yours, it's ours. But just as a way to to understand what was at stake, or what still is at stake. Oh, you can laugh too, because some of the animals are funny. It's not like super serious. Those are their tails. I think it's good off. Yeah, it's better to see. Easier to see the. Okay, great. So the Jaguar is in the audience right now. One of the musicians is here. So Vicki Brown and David Sudak did that music, and Ben Johnson filmed it, and Greg Colburn was the Jaguar. So what we learned was that for all of our intellect and intelligence, and strength as human beings, what we learned was that it's like we're so limited. We're bulky, we're oafy. It was very hard to become some of these animals. And then I started like questioning, like, well, should I actually be becoming the animals, or should I just remain myself? And so that kind of leads me into the next question of you are here. We move back to the Tucson Basin, although we could really do this anywhere that there are saguaro cactus. And who teaches me how to be here? So I started to become interested in like how I might connect with other species, not just by imitating them or trying to become them, but how could I partner with them? So I started wondering, like, how do you duet with a saguaro cactus, which is like a plant that really doesn't want to be touched and certainly doesn't want to give me its weight or take my weight. So what does that mean? So one evening, I gave myself a simple assignment to just stand next to a saguaro for an hour at sunset on Tumamoc Hill. And I didn't need to like pretend to be the cactus. I could just be myself. And if I needed to like fidget, I could. And if I needed to sit, I could. But what would that experience be like? And you know, some people do very, very long durational performances. This was not a performance, nor was it that durational, but you know, it's, have you ever stood somewhere for an hour? But what I found at the end of the hour was just this like very profound sense of myself as a being witnessed, and witnessing. So this is this very beautiful, cosmic, simple yet profound hour of my life. And I was just like, everyone has to do this. So I set out to see if I could get as many people as I could to have that, their own experience with the cactus, being with the cactus. And so I got some funding from the National Endowment for the Arts. I worked with Borderlands Theater, and I think by the end of it, we had about 300 people in various places, mostly in Saguaro National Park, have an experience with the cactus of standing with it for an hour. It was like it kind of became a little campaign. You'd stand for an hour, and you weren't supposed to have your phone out, but at the end, you could take a selfie and post it, and you get a little sticker. And there's our mayor, Regina Romero. That was before she was the mayor. But having this experience in the park. And people had really beautiful things to say about it. So I'll just share some of these. My saguaro was worn down like a person who has known hardship. It sang like a rain stick. It was a perfect day to watch the sunrise with the saguaros. The flowers were blooming on the tops of them. An exciting time for the autumn as we prepare for the traditional New Year. I picked a saguaro with multiple arms, probably around 120 years of age. Tucson in 1900 was a population of around 10,000. The passage of time as one gets older is amazing, and it is nice to hang out with older living things like saguaros. Curve-billed thrashers dig their whole heads deep into the flowers. I wish I could do that. I played tiny dry desert music on the spines. This would be a good way to spend an hour at sunrise once a week. Indeed. So I also, in that project, I ended up interviewing a handful of people, probably about a dozen, about their relationship with the cactus and what the cactus teaches them. So park rangers, scientists, anthropologists, architects, artists. And then in partnership with KXCI, we created short little 3-minute, 5-minute like radio program. So I just want to play one of them because it's pretty funny. So there's nothing to look at, so this is just an exercise in listening.
Welcome to the Saguaro Minute, a short program about all things saguaro, beloved icon of the Sonoran Desert. I'm your host, Kimi Eisele. I'm here today with Ken Rosenthal, a photographer in Tucson. And how many years have you been living in Tucson?
Almost 23 years now. I feel like a native.
The reason I asked you in is because I hear that you have an interesting relationship with a saguaro cactus in your backyard.
Yeah, there's a saguaro that's not an enormous saguaro. It's probably about 8 feet, no arms yet. I live just outside the city limits on a property that's pretty studded with saguaro. And this one I'd never taken note of before until one evening just past sunset. It was kind of dusky. You know, sometimes you feel as if you're being watched. I felt as if something was looking at me, and I looked over at the saguaro, and I'd never had this feeling from a saguaro before, but I felt as if this saguaro was judging me.
What was this saguaro doing that gave you this sense?
I think it was the angle at which it was growing. It was kind of leaning in, and the way that it was backlit, due to the time of day.
Were there any markings or scars on it in particular?
No, I mean, it's fairly fresh. There's a couple small little bird pecks, which oddly enough were in the shape of eyes, and then a little hole that might be the mouth. It was enough that I went in the house eventually. I was bothered enough
You were
by it.
so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You go inside, and then, what happened the next day?
Well, the next day I came out and I looked at the saguaro, and it seemed infinitely more benevolent.
Hmm. So
Absolutely.
do you think that the lighting had something to do with this?
I think it's a combination of both the lighting as well as where my internal state was at that point. I don't think that this is really a saguaro that is hell bent on making my life miserable.
Right. Now, I just got to ask, I mean, do you ever have that sense about other human beings that if they're just sort of sitting there and not saying anything, have you ever had that sense that you're being judged?
Yes, I've definitely had that feeling with other human beings.
So, how are you moving through this issue with this friend in your yard? What are you
Well,
doing?
I've just decided that he's not really bothering me. I'm not going to bother him. I'm going to try and have a better attitude, realize that if it does have a soul, I don't logically believe that it is a bad soul.
Do you think that you were judging it at all?
I think I was.
What did this saguaro teach you?
I think the saguaro taught me to not judge so quickly. So, saguaro, if you're listening to this, if I if I judged you too quickly, I apologize.
So just kind of to illustrate like how we befriend or how we personify and how we can also perhaps be sensed by the plants. So we had musicians out there. I just wanted to share this quick story too. I had school kids come out to the park, and this was all happening around the centennial, 100th anniversary of the national park system. So the middle schoolers like couldn't stand for an hour, but they did 10 minutes. But the high schoolers really loved it. And one day I had students from Hashan, the Tohono O'odham Preparatory School, come out, and of course they have a long relationship. The word Hashan is the O'odham word for saguaro. And so the girls came out one day and the boys came out another day, and it was just so interesting because have you all been to Saguaro National Park West? So there's like in the amphitheater inside, you watch this little film, and then when the film ends, the screen comes up and you have this like gorgeous view of the desert. Well, it was just so funny because one of the park rangers was just really, really worried that the girls were gonna get in the view of the other humans in the park, and he just did not want the pristine desert landscape to be marred by any human soul, much less, autumn girls whose family members have been harvesting saguaro for years. So I just thought it was just so telling about the way we think about landscape and our relationship with it differently. And so then on the actual centennial, I somehow got I don't know, however many dozen people out into the park at dawn to participate in the saguaro ball where they dressed up and danced with cactus. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of that because it's pretty fun. They came and learned to dance and then woke up at the crack of dawn and went out. And some of the dancers are also in the room today. So fortunately, we have a national park right here on either side of town that will, hopefully nothing will ever happen to that land. But that's not always the case, right? So we're gonna just move south a little bit to the US-Mexico border, to Organ Pipe National Park, National Wildlife Refuge, National Park. And what happens when a barrier divides here? So in 2019, of course, during the first Trump presidency, the expansion of the US border wall was happening rampantly. And once again, I started thinking about like not only all of the human lives affected by that wall, we know that it divides families, we know that it harms people and changes entire communities. We know that it destroys miles and miles and miles of desert vegetation. We know that many sacred archaeological sites are at risk, the water table, and then of course, like the animals that have been using migratory routes across the border for many years. So I once again gathered a crew of folks to be two-legged human animals, but imagining what it would be like to come upon the wall. And so we went just on the Mexican side of the border through Lukeville, Sonoita. So on the other side of the wall is Organ Pipe. So we just kind of put ourselves there. It wasn't a performance. I mean, it was sort of a performance, but it was happening on film. There was really no audience, but ourselves and the desert. So just thinking about the weight of that wall, the act of dividing the desert in that way. And then, of course, while we were there, a car came and some guys got out of the car. And I don't know if you can see at the far end of the wall, but they weren't crossing, but they were just illustrating that the wall does not necessarily keep people from crossing. So you can see a man scaling up the wall. He just scaled all the way up to the top and came back down. He didn't go over because he didn't have yet a mattress on the other side, which would come later. So the walls don't necessarily stop smugglers or migrants, but we know that they stop wildlife. Back to Tucson. How do we celebrate here? How do we mourn here? And I'm just gonna change gears a little bit and put my folklorist hat on and just talk briefly about the annual Tucson Meet Yourself Folk Life Festival that happens in downtown Tucson every October, as it has been happening for 52 years. Founded by the late Big Jim Griffith, folklorist here at the University of Arizona. He also, incidentally, was the first person who said yes when I asked if he would contribute to the first issue of You Are Here. And he was one of my mentors and had an impact on how I move through the world. So his idea of bringing, he was the founder of Tucson Meet Yourself with his wife Loma, and his idea was to bring all of the cultures of Tucson and all of the cultural expressions that were happening in people's churches and backyards and kitchens into the public square. So this now ongoing folk life festival of dance and music and food, people like to call it Tucson Eat Yourself. Just a very special, homegrown, beloved festival with all different kinds of people from the region, from the Pasquayaqui tribe to the Tucson Chinese Cultural Center. And it's just a really beautiful, wild experiment in the politics of civility. Can you stand next to someone else who isn't like you and eat food next to them and watch their music and find out what you have in common or how you differ? So when the pandemic happened, we moved the festival online, which was kind of impossible, but we somehow pulled it off. And then in 2021, when we returned to the public square, it just seemed kind of strange to be so full of celebration while we were carrying so much grief. And so I pitched to my colleagues to just create a space for grief at the festival, like a tent that was a little less busy, a little more serene, where you could come and express or feel your feelings. So we had death doulas there where you could talk about whatever you were carrying if you felt comfortable with that. We had a display and a healer, an herbalist passing out like sprigs of medicinal plants. I invited musicians that maybe kind of had big performances on the main stages to come to the tent and do something a little bit more intimate, share songs of mourning or share ceremony that could help people feel a sense of communal healing. And then there was the loss board where people could write down their loved ones or write down whatever they had lost. And you could just see when people walked by and they would try to figure out what this was, like you could see in their bodies when they needed this, and they would enter the tent and just like some people just hung out of the tent like the entire day. So it was a special place. I really loved making it, and it tied in with some of the other work that we've done at the Folklife Alliance around end of life and understanding and celebrating the many ways that we mourn, depending on where we come from. I was looking for a brain and a heart, and then somebody on the internet made this one, and I just really like the image. So the last thing that I'll share is just a kind of the combination of brain and heart, continuing with end of life and just thinking about what happens before we're almost not here and then when we're not here anymore. So it's my dad, Fred Eisele. A professor of health policy and community development, a very curious man, a researcher, a geographically inclined person. He had an incredible sense of direction and would always be asking you, what's the main industry in the town where you live, or who employs the people in the town where you live, and he would be researching it. So I feel like a lot of my sense of curiosity and inquiry came from him and also from my mom. So in July, this incredible brain of his got diagnosed with cancer, and he very rapidly lost his ability to wayfind, to sequence, and to have insight. So my mom and I took care of him for about 6 weeks at home, and he could remember and speak some of the time, and but I couldn't really have the kind of conversations about what was happening with him. And so I started to draw him, and I used this method called blind contour, or my own version of blind contour, where you look at your subject and but not at your paper. So you're capturing it's like an experience in deep looking, and you're supposed to not lift your pen off the paper, but I didn't do that for the first however many of them. And so what ended up happening was that I ended up capturing like how he was feeling in his body and in that moment, in his here-ness. He would say, sometimes it feels like my brain's falling apart. And I was like, and he really enjoyed looking at these drawings. He really loved the process of it. He just got a kick out of it. And so I kind of just cataloged the decline. At one point I was drawing him and he was like, 57 pictures of my dad dying. And I was like, okay, well, there's a title. And then also, I guess I have to do 57 of them. So I ended up doing more than 57 because these are pretty rapid sketches. But then I started, painting doing paintings from the drawings. And so I'm like halfway through the 57 of those. But it was just like a really beautiful way to like be here with him while he was here, and in the only way that we really could be together. So yeah, he really liked looking at them. So remember that empty riverbed? Well, in the last few years, some folks figured out that if we treated our wastewater a little bit more diligently, we could return that water to the riverbed, and the riparian area could return along with some of the species that had once inhabited that river, like the Gila top minnow, who was absent from the Santa Cruz River for 70 years, our very own Sonoran Desert fish species, endangered, came back to the Santa Cruz. So this is just near Prince Road North, but now, of course, we have the heritage flow through town. If you're from the Pacific Northwest, you're like, river, what are you talking about? But for us here, this river is like, it's such an incredible flow to just be down in that riverbed now compared to like when Katie was trying to dive into the sand. It's just very magical. And I don't know that the offering that we gave it, however, to 15 years ago actually did anything, but I like to think energetically that it helped. So the thing I'm working on now is an installation across the riverbed of trying to magnify some of the microscopic species down in that water. It'll be like a series of windsocks that I'm working on in collaboration with another artist. But leading up to that, we're doing some community gatherings in the riverbed. So you can be a trained artist, you can be a non-trained artist, you could dance, you could sculpt, you could draw, you could play music. But we've done one already, and we've got 2 more coming up on March 30th and April 13th, and it's just a way to come and be together in the lifeline of our city with the water and to hang out and make art. So please come. There's the address. You can also ask me about it later. I just wanted to close by going back to the journal rag and just reading a little bit from the 10th anniversary edition. As a way to kind of spring forward into the future, I guess. Start where you are, 1997. On the 4th floor of Harville Building, a sterile 1970s brick rectangle that houses the University of Arizona's Department of Geography and Regional Development. When I first climbed the stairs and entered the building to begin my graduate studies, the space itself irked me. Inside, a sprawling maze of hallways, doors, and tiny grad student offices offered no real central gathering area. The department itself seemed an accidental microcosm of Tucson. Where was the central plaza? Where was the coffee room? Where would we, young graduate students with ample curiosity and new ideas, sit and debate and exchange? Where would we overlap, intersect, bleed, push on, and alter the discipline of geography? Clearly, we needed a new space. The most intimate and distant landscapes now fit in your very own hands, an alternative atlas that aims to remind you that you too are everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kimmy. It's wonderful. So we definitely have some time for questions. So what I'll do is just run around with the mic if you raise your hand, and I'll come head your way. And we'll probably have some from the Zoomlandia also. But I want to make sure you have the mic so that we can hear your questions on the recording. So questions, comments, no pressure. Mr. Powell.
Kimmy, that was, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kimmy, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Very inspiring. And I got to say the yellow-billed cuckoo piece. I've studied yellow-billed cuckoos, so to see that particular dance, if you will, that was wonderful. I've always enjoyed that. So, my name is Brian Powell. I work with Pima County for the Conservation Lands and Resources Department, and I've been working for the county for 20 years, trying to advance the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, which is about here. You know, it's a far-reaching plan that we're trying to educate people, empower people, and I'd love to get your thoughts. You know all about the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan. You worked in the artist margins of it. I'd love to get your thoughts about sort of centering the community around conservation kind of more broadly. And I think the work that you do is about sort of taking nature and community and centering it here. So if you were to give me advice from the county advice on how we can push forward SDCP 2.0, what would some of your thoughts be on that?
Brian, well, I think you're a good person to have in there because you're also an artist, even though I know you don't think of yourself as one. But I think get some embedded artists into the program, like find the line item and get someone or a group or a team in there, or because I think that kind of I mean, you know this, but like pushing the thinking, right? In municipalities and bureaucracies, it's like, well, we can't do that because we've never done that before. But once you see that you can do it and you have seen what can be done, then I think it really, or just to have the person there with the spine, the cactus spine. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So that's what comes to mind, I think. But I think I think public programs, but I guess it just like feels like getting folks on the inside. And I have to say that compared to 15 years ago, like when we did the river it's not the river dance, when we did the dance in the riverbed, you know, it was like they were like, what, a permit? Like, we have to give you a permit, but what are you going to do? You're going to mess something up. But now, like when I met with the county a couple weeks ago for this other project, and it was just like, oh, that sounds great. We want to keep the whatever you're making. We want to put it on the. So I feel like the kind of the old school stiff. No offense to the old school stiffer bureaucrat, but like I feel like there's a newer generation of people who understand how the arts can help us do things in different ways. So I think it's already happening, but an embedded artist would be cool.
Other questions? Yeah.
Thank you. Kimi, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mary. My last name is Claire. I really love that you are here. And that you went through a series of questions related to that as part of your introduction. And then you spoke with the gentleman about his feeling judged by the cactus thing, which was just lovely. I find myself wondering, in all that you are here, what are you hearing people saying about how they find answers to the question, who are you? Like that gentleman, the way you led those questions got to speaking about how the cactus had taught him. Did you run into any more instances of things like that?
Well, I mean, that question of like, what does the saguaro teach you? Like, I asked everybody that question because, and that was actually something, I think I learned that from reading Robin Wall Kimmerer about like, we like to know what the plant is called. Like, we want to know about it instead of like listening to what it's teaching us. So I think I had like heard her speak before I did that project, and was able to then think of like, oh, well, what are we learning from the other species? Because that's part of like decentralizing the human animal, is like thinking that we are the ones imparting knowledge or needing to find out, you know, bestow knowledge rather than kind of listening for it. So I don't feel like I'm really answering the question, but it's maybe one of the guiding questions I've had. I have to go back and listen to that, what people said in that. I can't totally remember all the, at least in that particular project. But I'm thankful for the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kimmy. That was wonderful. And I just have a question. You know, maybe we're coming off of it, but these centuries of separation thinking, at least as far back as Descartes, where nature's here and humans here, and then we have the hierarchy of who's best and whatnot, and so much now depends on sort of breaking down that wall between the psyche and the natural world. What are you thinking are the main obstacles remaining that sort of keep us in this, you know, separation mentality, that keep us from being integrated in a healthier way?
Propriety. Like, well, the first thing that came to mind is like, oh, I shouldn't cry when I'm talking about my dad who died. Like, I'm not supposed to do that. Like, I mean, of course I want to get through the talk, but then it's like, well, why can't I cry? Like, it's real. And then, you know, like the many times that I've done workshops with adults about like in dance, you know, movement workshops, it's like pulling teeth to like get people to crawl on the floor. I mean, at a certain point it's not, and then people will crawl on the floor, but like you all crawled on the floor at one point and now you're like, well, I don't do that, you know? So it's partly like, maybe this is a silly answer, but I think it's like you have to be a little bit willing to be weird. You know, like I think when I first did the saguaro thing, I was like, this is so profound. But I talked to a friend and I'm like, is this just totally weird? Like, am I going to get other people to come and do this? And he's like, well, if you're that into it, I think you probably will. But you know, I even me, like after this profound experience, I was like, "Ah, people are going to think I'm so like, I don't really do. I do sort of care what people think, but then sometimes I don't. You know, so I don't know. I feel like that's a lot of it, right? Where it's like we just think we have to. Again, I keep doing the stiff thing, but I don't know. That's just what came to mind right now. Yeah. Go home, lie on the floor. I don't mean leave, but like go lie on the floor later. Later. Go ahead.
Other questions? Yeah. Hold on. And Carlos, I think there was one in the Zoom too. I thought I noticed that. Okay.
Yes, like everyone else, just thank you so much. Beautiful. And I'm personally so moved about the drawings of your father. And I appreciate that you expressed your emotion, because it just, you know, I recently went through that with my father. And so I'm so delighted to see that you went through that, where you shared it with him. And, you know, I think I'm interested in the future and more of that, more of all of it, but that piece of between we are here and we were here very much. And I just wanted to mention that, you know, as you're talking about, we need to be willing to be weird. Another way maybe that may be easier for some people to look at it is I just see the power of play. And when we're in a world that is so desperately polarized, and we can't find ground for civil discourse about things, very certainly not very easily, then I want to imagine these things that you're doing as play that can also go from the power that you're already involved in of being in place and having this experiential piece. And I would love to see, if maybe it's already happened, a translation into things like actions. You know, it's different, but to take, you know, I'm imagining the saguaro ball, and what came to me just now was with your experience with the beautiful Tucson Meet Yourself. I can imagine an annual You Are Here parade, but where we maybe, you know, it can be open, but maybe we take something where I can just see like the cardboard saguaros and people doing their dance, or related particularly to actions that we all need to take, because it's so scary for people right now to protect these spaces, is now we realize requiring so much more of us than to just sign petitions or sign letters, or, you know, we have to get, I believe we have to get into the streets, so to speak. But maybe that can be with play, and it helps people to play together first and then be able to think and suspend some of the judgment and some of the lines of how we think, oh, that's them and I'm me, you know, the opposition. So I love this, and it's really inspiring to me in that regard to imagine, because one last comment is that I'm from Colombia as well, and I'm forever, and I've been an activist, a community activist for a long time. So I believe in the power of us going out and demanding, you know, things in the streets. But when I'm in Colombia, it's a party. It's just this incredible, you know, people are music and dancing and artists. And my example is, even in one of the national strikes they had, you know, theater people going through everything, but they also even had yoga folks that were in a yoga community that were marching with their mats, and they would break in the intersections. They would stop the traffic by laying their mats out, stopping and doing yoga with everyone, and then going on.
That's
I mean,
great.
so, you know, another form of creative geography,
Yeah.
you know, and I hope we can translate it to that so that we can get the numbers we need out there to really not let our democracy, the hope of democracy, be extinguished. And beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raquel. I love that. Thanks. Organize the parade. I'll come.
Yeah, yeah, hold on just a second here. Okay.
Sally was one of the people who let me be weird when I was a geography student. So
Kimi, I want to thank you for something that was sublime, amazing. I also want to say, I want to applaud you for refusing to be disciplined. Even though you still are a geographer at heart, you see geography everywhere. And I don't have a question. I just want to say, I'm so proud of you. And
Well-
I'm so also appreciative of your bringing your father into the room with the rest of us.
well, and also, I can't remember your name, but when you were asking like what it takes to break those divides, I think it also takes people, and in my case, women before me, who also were willing to let me do the thing the way I wanted to do it, even though it was maybe like a little less traditional. Like Diana as my thesis, both Diana and Sally as my thesis advisors. I mean, they let me write the thing how I wanted to write it, and they guided me, you know, like kind of following my lead with that. So thank you to that beautiful those models of like women who will let you do things differently because they did things differently.
So I echo what Sally said. I'm very proud of having brought you to Tucson and for what you've done for our community. But I think my question is at two levels. What do you observe about how the university could relate better to where we are and to the community? And at the smaller scale, what can geography as an academic discipline do better in terms of embracing the arts and place and whatever?
I feel so out of the loop, Diana. But I mean, I think that's already I think that's happening. I mean, like with some of the work that's going on with art and environment, for example. I don't know what happens with first year students that come in, but I remember like when I came in, there was like no fault of anyone here, but like there was no orientation to this place. You just like went straight into your classroom. And I remember like some years later, or I don't know, Josh Schachter's here. And I remember at somewhere in this history, someone at the Honors College asked us to devise a course for the honors students, which I think that course is still going. I don't know, but it was like the Tucson community course. And so we were like, here's what it should be. We never taught the course. We just planned it and said, here's who you should have speak and here's what it should be about. But it was kind of like an introduction to like the geography, cultural, human, physical of Tucson, but that didn't exist before. So I think, I'm sure there's like maybe a better orientation process now, but just like when you land, it's like, well, where are you, and what are all the tributaries you could go down just in being here? So, but maybe that's happening. That's right. Yeah, great. Josh, will you do that with me? Yeah, and then I'm not that I barely have a toe in the discipline, so I don't I don't know what to say to the other part of your question, but I'd love to think about it with you.
We have a few more minutes for a couple more questions. We have one in the Zoom from
Okay.
Cassidy that I think is we should.
Cool. How do I answer that?
Carlos is gonna.
Thank you, Kimmy. So grateful for your time and your words. As the founder of You Are Here, can you speak a little more about what you imagine the future of the journal to look like, or even the intersection of art and geography more broadly? I've learned so much through my time with the journal, and thank you for the opportunity too. So Cassidy was the most recent editor. I think there was like a minute this fall where the funding was going to be cut. I ran into Poppy somewhere, and she told me that, and I was like, well, I can't wait to call whoever. So I think my first answer to that is to like secure the funding. I mean, it's just a drop in the bucket. I think when I started the journal, I think I got like $50 from the department. I got a lot more money from like science and fine arts and whatever, but I know it costs money to support a student in a TA-ship or an RA-ship, but I think it's really, really worth it. Obviously, I think it's worth it. The future of the journal to look like, yeah, I think just like making sure that students are supported in doing it, because I think what the journal looks like is whatever the editors want it to look like. But I do like the idea that it sits just like that it sits in the discipline, but it like sits like slightly on the edge of the discipline, and that it should stay there on the edge, because that's part of what being a student is. You're like pushing the edge. So I guess that's how I'd answer that question.
Well, I think $50 in 1998 was probably more like 500.
Like 5,000 now, right? Yeah.
So a couple more questions. I know we have one here.
I just want to thank you, Kimmy. I came today because I needed inspiration and I knew you'd give it to me. But you also gave me a hug in the heart, so thank you. There's so many things that I've heard here that I want to just touch on. And one was your comment to the gentleman up there with the conservation plan. I totally agree about embedding arts and all kinds of artists in it. We have a lot of mural artists in this town, but as Kimmy's shown, dance is another way to interact with bringing in your bodily movements, and we hold trauma in our bodies. But many other, I'm a ceramic artist, so many other artists. And Kimmy, the work you're doing right now, I really wanted to come, but March 30th is made in Tucson, and then I'm out of town. So I hope you will continue to do these and open them to the community. I feel so lucky to have people like you here in Tucson, and in terms of introducing us through your work. But in answer to your question about how can the university be more, I'm on a lot of review committees and different things. I work at the university, and there is more work now where there are more experiential classes taking students into the community. And the kind of comments I was reading, I don't remember whether it was a presentation or a review I was doing, but the students don't know where they are. They don't know they're here. They may not know where they came from either, or where they're going, but they certainly don't know this place. And I agree with Kimmy that more classes that get students working off the land, involved with the people here, to do their reflections and their writing. And in relation to that, to me, geography was maps. I didn't know what geography was. So you just gave it a whole persona, a depth to it. And that, to me, is the kernel of a class, an introduction for every student, every first year student, to know the community they're in and think about as they're creating projects in sort of in line with what you were saying, how to give back to that community, how to create this community and bring it up, rise it up, elevate it. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you so much, Kimmy, because I feel like I've been hugged for an hour.
I think, who said that geography is the hub of all disciplines? Do you remember? It's true. I think Einstein also said like physics, meh, geography, that's the really hard stuff.
Okay, one more question over here.
Hi. So nice to meet you. I'm Lisa Nelson. I'm the interim director right now of geography.
Hi.
And I just, you just reminded me what a great thing you founded in founding the student journal. And I just wanted to clarify, we have not cut the journal. What happened is the last issue took 2 years worth of the budget. So we had to pause it, and where the next issue is going to start, next fall. And Ryan and Deanna are going to be the editors. So
Awesome.
it was a
Okay, good.
misframing of it to say it was cut.
Good.
It was
Thank
just over budgeted, basically.
Thank you. Who are the new editors? Okay, great. It's mostly been a women-led publication, so.
Well, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap it. And I will also just say, Kimi, thank you so much. You're such an inspiration, and you just have blazed your own trail, and I think that's just amazing. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.